He cornered me in the pantry while the Thanksgiving turkey filled the house with its golden aroma, his breath hot against my ear as he whispered, "You deserved it." The silver serving platters couldn't mask the sound of his fist connecting with my jaw, but this time, I wasn't running. I had my recorder rolling, my emergency fob clutched in my palm, and a plan to strike back at the feast they thought would silence me forever. My name is Harper Lane, and at 4:17 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, I stood in my mother's pantry with cinnamon and nutmeg thick in the air, watching my stepfather's knuckles turn white as he grabbed my wrist. "You need to learn your place," Ron Whitaker hissed, his wedding band catching the overhead light, the same ring my mother polished religiously every Sunday. The pantry walls seemed to close in, lined with Martha Stewart organizing bins labeled in Denise's perfect handwriting, flour, sugar, happiness. That last one always made me want to laugh. Or scream. The kitchen beyond hummed with borrowed elegance 24 place settings of rented silverware at $1,200, maple leaf centerpieces my mother had fussed over since October, and that obscene $180 heritage turkey that Ron insisted would show everyone we've made it. The smell of sage butter mingled with his cologne, the expensive kind he started wearing after his promotion at the real estate firm. "Let go," I said, keeping my voice low, steady. The mini recorder tucked in my camera strap was rolling, its tiny red light hidden beneath black electrical tape. My other hand found the emergency key fob in my pocket, thumb hovering over the panic button. Ron's grip tightened, and I felt the bones in my wrist grind together. "You're going to go out there, smile at our guests, and stop this victim act. Pastor Williams is here. The Hendersons from my office. Your mother worked too hard. You mean Denise worked too hard covering for you?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. That's when he hit me. Not a slap. Ron was too smart for marks that showed easily. A calculated strike to my ribs, hidden beneath my burgundy sweater, in the spot where bruises bloom like secrets nobody wants to acknowledge. The pain shot through my torso, but I didn't buckle. Not this time. "You deserved it," he said, and something in his eyes shifted that mask he wore so well, slipping just enough to show the poison underneath. "You've always deserved it, ever since you were 12, mouthing off, thinking you're better than this family." The serving dishes clinked in the dining room. My half-sister Brielle's laugh rang out, bright and champagne bubbly, probably showing off her new engagement ring to the church ladies. The golden child. The one who got the car at 18 while I worked 3 jobs to buy a rusted Honda. The one whose name was spelled correctly on the place cards, unlike mine, deliberately misspelled as Harpy in gold calligraphy. I pressed the SOS button, holding it for 3 seconds. Somewhere across town, Talia's phone was lighting up with my location, the emergency recording streaming directly to her cloud storage. The app would auto-dial 911 in 90 seconds unless I canceled it. "You're right," I said, stepping back, creating distance between us like Mr. Keating had taught me in those self-defense sessions. I did deserve better than this. Ron's face flushed purple-red, the color of the cranberry sauce my mother was probably garnishing with orange zest right now. He moved toward me again, but I was already pushing past him, my ribs screaming, my hand steady on the pantry door. The dining room opened before me like a stage crystal glasses catching the late afternoon light, the good china my mother inherited from her mother, and 22 faces turning toward me as I emerged from the pantry. Ron close behind, his breath ragged with rage he couldn't quite contain in front of company. The clock on the mantel showed 4:17 p.m., its brass hands frozen in that moment when everything was about to change. The turkey sat magnificent and untouched on its sterling platter. The gratitude cards my mother had everyone write were stacked neatly by each place setting, and in my pocket, the emergency fob had done its job. I could already hear the faint sound of sirens in the distance, though nobody else seemed to notice yet over the classical music and polite conversation. This would be the last Thanksgiving I'd spend as their victim, the last time anyone in this room would mistake silence for peace. Ron Whitaker entered my life when I was 12. carrying a briefcase full of promises and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. My mother had been alone for 3 years since Dad's heart attack, and Ron seemed like salvation wrapped in a Brooks Brothers suit. He brought flowers every Friday, taught Denise how to golf, and told me I was going to be a heartbreaker someday, in that way that made my skin crawl even then. The discipline started small, a twisted arm when I forgot to load the dishwasher, fingers digging into my shoulder when I laughed too loud during his business calls. Structure, he called it. Teaching you respect. My mother would find me crying in my room and smooth my hair, whispering, "He's trying. Harper. He just doesn't know how to be a father yet. Don't make waves." By 14, I'd learned the choreography of our twisted family dance. Keep quiet. Stay invisible. Don't trigger Ron's temper. When Brielle was born, his biological daughter, his real child, the contrast became a masterclass in favoritism. Her first car at 16, a white BMW with a red bow. My 16th birthday, a card with a $20 bill and a lecture about earning my keep. Brielle's college fund started before she could walk. I waited tables at Rosario's diner until 3 a.m. to pay for community college courses. The photography was mine, though every family portrait, every holiday card, every "look how perfect we are" social media post, all shot through my lens, my eye, my artistic vision. But the credits always read Whitaker Family Photos. My name erased, my talent absorbed into their narrative like everything else about me that had value. 2 years ago, the violence escalated. Ron had been drinking Macallan 18-year because even his alcoholism had to be premium and decided to drive to his office Christmas party. I stood in front of his Lexus, keys in my hand, begging him to let me call an Uber. He shoved me into the garage wall so hard I felt my shoulder separate. The concrete scraped my cheek raw, and I tasted copper in my mouth. "Just a stumble," my mother told the ER nurse, her fingers trembling as she signed the paperwork. "These things happen. We're all so clumsy during the holidays." The nurse, a woman with tired eyes and graying roots, looked at me for a long moment. "These things do happen," she said carefully, sliding a women's shelter card under my discharge papers. "But they don't have to keep happening." I kept that card in my wallet for 2 years, its edges soft from handling, the hotline number memorized but never dialed, because leaving meant abandoning my mother, meant letting Ron win, meant admitting that the family I'd tried so hard to belong to had never wanted me in the first place. This year's Thanksgiving was supposed to be Ron's victory lap. His real estate firm had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal. Brielle had gotten engaged to a surgeon's son, and I'd been summoned back despite months of careful distance. A family reconciliation, my mother called it, her voice bright and brittle over the phone. "Pastor Williams will be there, and the Hendersons, and that nice couple from Ron's country club. Please, Harper, just one dinner. Show everyone we're united." The text from Brielle last week had shattered any illusions about reconciliation. A photo of the place cards everyone's name in elegant script, mine deliberately butchered. "If you behave, sis, maybe we'll spell it right next year." That's when I knew. This wasn't a family dinner. It was an ambush, designed to humiliate me in front of their carefully curated audience. They wanted me there as the broken one, the difficult one, the cautionary tale that made their success shine brighter. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't powerless, and I was done being their ghost story. The decision crystallized as I stared at my bank balance, $4,950 saved from freelance photography gigs and overtime at Hearthline Capital. Enough for a security deposit on a new apartment. Enough for a lawyer consultation. Enough to buy my freedom. But first, I needed to expose the truth they'd worked so hard to hide behind Thanksgiving centerpieces and charity fundraisers. I needed witnesses who couldn't be dismissed or silenced. I needed proof that would echo louder than my mother's practiced denials. I needed to fight back on their turf, at their table, with their audience watching. The text from Brielle arrived on a Tuesday while I was editing wedding photos for a client. her words dripping with that particular brand of cruelty she'd perfected over the years. "Hope you can behave yourself this Thursday. Sis, would hate for you to ruin Mom's special day. Again." Attached was a photo of the menu card's $600 worth of gold-embossed cardstock that spelled everyone's name correctly except mine. Harpy Lane, in elaborate script, positioned at the far end of the table, next to the kitchen door. I stared at that deliberate typo until my vision blurred. 28 years old, and they still found new ways to make me feel like an intruder in what was supposed to be my family. The wedding photos on my computer screen, a couple laughing, genuinely in love, mocked me with their joy. That's when something inside me shifted. Not broke. I'd been broken and rebuilt too many times to count. This was different. This was clarity. Sharp as the X-Acto knife I used for mounting prints. I pulled up my bank app, $4,950. Every dollar earned with my own hands, my own talent, my own time sacrificed. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it was enough to stop being their victim. The Women's Resource Center operated out of a converted Victorian house downtown, painted purple with white trim like a bruise healing in reverse. The lawyer, Ms. Martinez, had kind eyes and a firm handshake. 45 minutes of consultation cost me $200, but her words were worth every cent. "Arizona is a one-party consent state," she explained, sliding a printout across her desk. "You can legally record any conversation you're part of, video too, as long as you're in a space where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. A family dinner, completely legal." She helped me understand the difference between self-defense and assault, showed me how to document injuries properly, explained what would hold up in court versus what would be dismissed as hearsay. By the time I left, I had a plan. Not for revenge, for survival with witnesses. The tactical store smelled like leather and gun oil. The clerk, barely out of his teens, showed me personal safety devices with enthusiastic detail. The voice recorder was tiny, smaller than a lipstick tube, with 8 hours of battery life. The button camera looked like a decorative pin, the kind my mother collected from estate sales. The SOS key fob connected to an app that would alert my emergency contacts and could stream audio directly to cloud storage. "This one's popular with real estate agents," the clerk said about the fob. 3-second press sends your location to up to 5 contacts and starts recording everything. Talia Nguyen met me at her apartment that evening, her medical textbooks scattered across the coffee table. We'd been friends since freshman year at ASU, and she was the only person who'd seen the bruises I'd hidden under scarves and long sleeves. "You're really doing this?" she asked, setting up the emergency app on her phone. "They want me there to play the family failure one more time," I said, testing the recorder's range. "But this time, I'm writing my own script." We ran through scenarios, planned contingencies. Talia would be on standby, phone charged, ready to call 911 or come get me. Mr. Keating, my neighbor and a retired Phoenix PD officer, agreed to be backup. He'd seen enough domestic situations to recognize the signs, had noticed my accidents over the years. The self-defense class at the Y was drop-in, $15 for 2 hours of basic techniques. The instructor, a woman with silver hair and arms like steel cables, taught us boundary setting, de-escalation, and when those failed, how to break free from holds without causing excessive harm. "The goal isn't to win a fight," she emphasized, demonstrating a wrist release. "It's to create space and get to safety. And remember, defending yourself is not assault. You have the right to protect your body." I practiced the moves until muscle memory took over the hip thrust to create distance, the heel palm strike, the loud "no" that came from the diaphragm. My body learned to fight back even as my mind still struggled with the concept. Wednesday night. I laid everything out on my bed like armor the recorder disguised as a camera strap accessory. The button cam that would blend with my burgundy sweater, the SOS fob on my regular keychain, my phone, fully charged, with the recording app ready to activate, the backup battery pack, just in case. I stood in front of my mirror, practicing my grateful daughter smile. the one that had gotten me through 18 years of Ron's reign. But behind that practiced expression, something new glinted in my eyes. Not rage was too hot, too uncontrolled. This was colder, more precise. They wanted a performance, I'd give them one. But this time, the show would end with the truth taking center stage, and their carefully constructed facade crumbling in front of everyone they'd tried so hard to impress. Tomorrow, at my mother's perfect Thanksgiving table, surrounded by her perfect guests and perfect lies, I would stop being the family ghost. Tomorrow, I would become their reckoning. Wednesday afternoon at the Y. The self-defense instructor's voice echoed off the gym walls as she demonstrated the wrist release again. Rotate toward the thumb, it's the weakest point of any grip. Don't pull back, rotate and step away. Create distance. My practice partner, a woman in her 50s with determined eyes, grabbed my wrist. I twisted, stepped, and broke free cleanly. Muscle memory was building, replacing years of trained freeze response with something more useful. Good, Harper. Now the defensive stance, hands up, protecting your face. Strong base with feet shoulder-width apart. The instructor circled us, adjusting postures. Remember, you're not trying to fight. You're trying to create opportunity to escape. We drilled the palm heel strike next, driving upward from the core, not the arm. Aim for soft targets if you must strike. Solar plexus, nose, throat, but only if escape isn't possible. She demonstrated on the practice dummy, the impact resonating with a solid thud. The hip thrust escape from a bear hug made my ribs ache where Ron had hit me before. Phantom pain from old injuries. But I practiced it anyway, learning to drop my weight, thrust my hips back, create that crucial moment of imbalance. The voice is your first weapon, the instructor emphasized during the last drill. A loud, firm, back off or no can startle an attacker, alert others, and mentally prepare you to act. Practice it. No. My voice came out stronger than expected, filling the space. Other women in the class turned, nodding approval. We all understood why we were here. After class, I met with Jennifer Santos from the Women's Legal Aid Clinic. Her office was cramped but meticulously organized, law books stacked like armor against injustice. Recording laws in Arizona are clear, she reiterated, pulling up statutes on her computer. You're a party to the conversation, so consent is implicit. The dining room, kitchen, living room, all common areas with no expectation of privacy. You're within your rights. She showed me how to file for an order of protection, helped me fill out the preliminary paperwork. Keep it in your car tomorrow. If anything happens, anything at all, you can file it immediately. The recording will serve as evidence. What about my mother? She'll say I'm lying, that it was an accident, that I misunderstood. That's why witnesses matter. Multiple recordings from different angles make it harder to claim misinterpretation. And if he's physical in front of guests? She trailed off meaningfully. That evening, I set up my devices with Talia's help. The button camera, no bigger than a pencil eraser, clipped perfectly to my sweater's decorative button line, invisible unless someone knew exactly what to look for. The recorder fit into the small leather pouch that held my camera lens cap, the red recording light completely hidden. The app is set, Talia confirmed, showing me her phone. The moment you hold that fob for 3 seconds, I get your GPS location. It starts recording audio to my cloud and begins a 90-second countdown to call 911. You can cancel it by pressing twice rapidly if it's a false alarm. We tested it 4 times, making sure the connection was solid. Each time, her phone lit up immediately with my exact location and the audio feed came through clear. Mr. Keating stopped by as we were finishing. The retired officer had the measured movements of someone who'd seen too much but hadn't let it break him. I'll be listening for anything unusual, he said quietly. Keep your phone charged, keep that fob accessible, and Harper. He met my eyes directly. Don't let guilt make you hesitate. If you need to defend yourself, you defend yourself. The law recognizes that right. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my apartment window, watching the lights of Flagstaff twinkle below, and practiced my thankful speech in case they demanded one. I'm grateful for the truth. I'm grateful for my voice. I'm grateful for the strength to use it. I checked my equipment one more time, battery levels full, storage space cleared, everything functional. The backup battery pack went into my purse along with the legal aid paperwork, my fully charged phone, and a small first aid kit. My laptop showed the route to the emergency room, the police station, and 3 safe locations Talia and I had identified. Every contingency planned, every detail considered. Tomorrow would begin like every family gathering with fake smiles and forced pleasantries. But I would walk in armed with something more powerful than Ron's fists or my mother's denial the truth, and the tools to prove it. I thought about 12-year-old me, cowering in my room while Ron raged downstairs. I thought about all the bruises hidden under makeup, all the tears swallowed down, all the times I'd been told I was too sensitive or making a big deal out of nothing. That little girl deserved justice. Tomorrow, she would finally get it. The plan was simple: stay calm, stay visible, document everything. And when Ron inevitably lost control, because he always did when challenged, let the truth record itself. No more hiding, no more silence, no more being the family sacrifice to keep their perfect image intact. The house smelled like butter and cinnamon when I arrived at 9:20 a.m. The familiar scent of my mother's Thanksgiving preparations hitting me like a physical memory. Through the kitchen window, I could see her bent over the turkey, basting it with the dedication of someone who believed a perfect meal could fix a broken family. Harper. Denise's embrace was performative, the kind of hug you give when others are watching. Her hands barely touched my back before pulling away. You look, well... The pause spoke volumes I hadn't worn the dress she'd sent, choosing instead dark jeans and the burgundy sweater with the hidden camera. Ron emerged from his study, already dressed in his expensive casual wear, the kind that screamed, "I'm relaxed but still better than you." His eyes tracked over me, cataloging points of criticism. "Good of you to make it," he said, his voice carrying that undercurrent of threat I knew so well. "Hope nobody has any incidents today. Your mother's worked so hard." The recording device was already running, hidden in my camera strap as I set my bag by the door. The button camera caught his dismissive sneer perfectly. "Just here to celebrate family," I replied evenly, letting him hear compliance while the devices captured his contempt. The house was staged like a magazine shoot, autumn garlands draped over doorways, ceramic turkeys positioned just so. Those ridiculous place cards Brielle had obsessed over arranged on the table. My seat was exactly where I'd expected, furthest from Ron's throne at the head, squeezed between the kitchen door and the kids' table, the metal folding chair contrasting with everyone else's upholstered seats. Harper Brielle swept in wearing a dress that cost more than my rent, her engagement ring catching the light with aggressive sparkle. "Oh, you wore that. How practical." She air-kissed near my cheek, her perfume overwhelming. "Look, everyone. The family photographer made it." She guided me to the dining room where the 24-karat gold-plated dishes gleamed on their custom chargers. "Aren't they stunning $1,200 to rent? But Daddy insisted on the best. You know how he is about appearances." I knew exactly how he was. Guests began arriving. Pastor Williams with his politician's smile, the Hendersons from Ron's firm, church ladies clutching covered dishes, and gossip in equal measure. I played my part, taking photos with my professional camera, staying visible but unobtrusive, documenting their performance of prosperity. At 3:45 p.m., Ron found me adjusting the temperature on the warming drawer. "Need you to help with something," he said, loud enough for my mother to hear. "The good wine is in the pantry, top shelf." The pantry was narrow, designed for one person, but Ron followed me in and pulled the door almost closed behind us. The overhead light cast harsh shadows, and the smell of spices couldn't mask his cologne too much. Always too much. Like he was trying to cover the stench of what he really was. "We need to discuss your behavior," he started, standing too close. using his height advantage. The camera was recording, the audio device capturing every word. What behavior would that be? I kept my voice low, steady, like I'd practiced. This victim act, this poor me routine you're planning. I know you, Harper. You're going to try to embarrass your mother. Embarrass her by existing. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, the same move, the same grip, the same position where he'd left bruises so many times before. Listen carefully, you ungrateful little. Why do you always tell me to keep quiet? I interrupted, watching his mask slip. Why is it always my job to keep the peace? Because you're a troublemaker. Always have been. 12 years old and already poisoning your mother against me, making her choose. She chose you, every time. His grip tightened, bones grinding. Because she knows what you are. Difficult, damaged, the product of a failed marriage, trying to ruin her second chance at happiness. Is that why you hit me? The question hung between us like a lit fuse. His face flushed dark red. Discipline. Something your real father clearly never taught you. Discipline. Is that what you call shoving me into walls, leaving bruises where clothes will cover them? You deserved it, he snarled. And there it was. The truth he'd hidden behind charity fundraisers and country club memberships. Every time you opened your smart mouth, every time you made your mother cry, every time you existed in my house like a ghost of her failure, you deserved it. The slap came fast, but I was ready this time. I turned my head with it, lessening the impact, then stepped back, creating space like I'd practiced. My finger found the SOS fob, pressed and held. 3 seconds. Talia would have my location now, the audio streaming directly to her cloud storage. Don't, I said firmly, loudly. Don't touch me again. He lunged forward, but I was already moving, hip-checking the pantry door open, stumbling into the kitchen where my mother stood frozen, gravy ladle in hand, her face a study in willful blindness. At 4:18 p.m., Talia's emergency app triggered the Bluetooth connection I'd set up earlier. The kitchen speaker, a smart device my mother used for recipe videos, suddenly crackled to life with Ron's voice, clear and damning. You deserved it. Every time you opened your smart mouth, you deserved it. The gravy ladle slipped from Denise's fingers, splattering bourbon reduction across her apron. In the dining room, conversation stuttered to a halt as Ron's recorded threats echoed through the house. The sound of his palm connecting with my face played next, followed by my firm, "Don't touch me again." I walked into the dining room, my cheek still burning red, chin raised. 22 faces turned toward me, Pastor Williams frozen mid-reach for his wine glass. Mrs. Henderson's mouth forming a perfect O of shock, the church ladies clutching their pearls in synchronized horror. I won't be silent anymore, I said, my voice cutting through the recorded playback. Ron burst from the kitchen, lunging for the speaker, yanking at cords. Technical difficulty, he stammered. Harper's obviously. I pulled out my phone, already connected to the TV via AirPlay. The button camera footage filled the 65-inch screen, Ron cornering me in the pantry, his hand gripping my wrist, his face twisted with rage. The image was crystal clear, the audio synchronized perfectly. "Turn it off!" Denise shrieked, but her voice was drowned out by Ron's recorded words. "Discipline! Something your real father clearly never taught you." Brielle stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. "This is insane, Harper. You're ruining everything." But even she couldn't look away from the screen where her father's true face was displayed in high definition. "She's setting me up," Ron argued, his confident businessman persona cracking like cheap plaster. "This is edited, manipulated. The metadata will prove otherwise," Mr. Keating said quietly from his seat near the window. His retired cop instincts had him positioned perfectly to observe and block the exit if needed. "That's admissible evidence of assault." The front door was already opening. 2 uniformed officers entered. The 911 call had been automatic after 90 seconds. just as planned. The sirens we'd been hearing weren't heading somewhere else. They'd been coming here. "We received an emergency alert from this address," the female officer announced, hand resting on her duty belt. "Report of assault in progress." "Misunderstanding," Ron tried, his salesman smile grotesque under the circumstances. "Family disagreement. You know how holidays can be." I stepped forward, holding up my phone. "I have video evidence of assault. Multiple recordings, different devices. I'd like to file a report and request an emergency protective order." The TV screen still showed Ron's face, frozen in that moment of rage. Several guests had their own phones out now, recording the aftermath, the collapse of the Whitaker family facade happening in real time. "Ma'am, do you need medical attention?" the male officer asked, noting my reddened cheek. "I'm documenting injuries, but I'm okay," I replied. "Mr. Keating here witnessed previous incidents of escalation." I gestured to my neighbor, who nodded confirmation. "This is ridiculous." Denise finally found her voice, designer heels clicking on hardwood as she moved between Ron and the officers. "Harper's always been dramatic. She misinterprets things, makes mountains out of molehills." "Is that what you call this?" I asked, rewinding the video to play Ron's "You Deserved It" again. A molehill. Pastor Williams stood slowly, his pastoral authority filling the space. "Ron, perhaps it would be best if you cooperated with the officers. This is deeply troubling." The Hendersons were already gathering their things. Mrs. Henderson whispering urgently to her husband about knowing something was off. And that poor girl. Ron's face cycled through purple-red rage to calculating assessment to desperate bargaining. It was a tap. He tried. Barely touched her. She's exaggerating like always. The audio played again, unbidden the distinct sound of palm meeting flesh. Several guests flinched. I pulled out the folder from my bag, the protection order paperwork. Completed except for signatures. "I'm requesting an emergency order of protection. I have documentation of past incidents, medical records, and now video evidence." Brielle stood frozen by her toppled chair, her perfect makeup running in black streams. "Daddy," she whispered, like she was seeing him for the first time. The female officer approached me with professional gentleness. "We'll need you to come to the station for a full statement. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" "Yes," I said. "I've made arrangements." The dining room had become a crime scene, the $180 turkey growing cold, the $1,200 place settings reflecting the blue and red lights now pulsing through the windows, the perfect family portrait shattered beyond repair. Ron tried one more time. "This is entrapment. She planned this, set me up." "You're saying she forced you to assault her?" the male officer asked flatly. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Denise couldn't spin that. The officers moved with practiced efficiency, one taking my statement while the other questioned Ron. The dining room had transformed into something from a crime procedural, guests giving witness accounts, the TV still frozen on Ron's contorted face, the smell of cooling turkey mixing with fear sweat and expensive perfume. "I saw him grab her arm earlier," Mr. Keating told the female officer, his voice carrying the weight of professional testimony. "When she was setting up the camera for family photos. Aggressive grip, clear intimidation. I've seen enough domestic situations to recognize the pattern." Mrs. Henderson clutched her husband's arm. "We heard shouting from the pantry, that poor girl's voice saying, 'Don't touch me.' We hoped we were mistaken." Pastor Williams stood near Ron, not in support but as a shepherd watching a wolf being exposed. "Ronald, I think you should listen to the officers. The truth has a way of surfacing, especially when documented so thoroughly." Ron's calculated businessman facade crumbled further with each witness statement. "Their misinterpreting the angle makes it look worse. Harper has always been troubled." "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us," the male officer interrupted. "You can explain your side at the station." "This is my house," Ron exploded, his mask finally shattering completely. That ungrateful bitch has been poisoning everyone against me for years, Denise. Tell them how difficult she is." My mother stood frozen between her husband and her daughter, her perfectly styled hair wilting, her hostess smile gone. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Harper sometimes overreacts. Overreacts. I pulled up my phone's photo gallery, scrolled to the folder I'd labeled Evidence, and handed it to the female officer. 2 years of documentation, ER visits she explained away, bruises she said were my fault, the shoulder separation she called clumsiness. Denise's face went white. "You took pictures." "The nurse at Flagstaff Medical suggested it, the one who slipped me the women's shelter card that you threw away." Brielle finally spoke, her voice small and confused. "But Daddy never. He wouldn't. Not to me." "No," I agreed quietly. "Not to you. You're his real daughter. I was just the unwanted reminder of Mom's first marriage." The female officer returned my phone. "This is substantial documentation. The prosecutor will want to see all of this." I pulled out the protection order paperwork, spreading it on the dining table between the gold-plated dishes and cooling side dishes. "I'm filing for an emergency protective order. Tonight." "You can't." Denise rushed forward. "Harper, please, think about what you're doing. The family reputation his business, my standing in the community." "Your standing." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What about my safety? What about 16 years of being his punching bag while you looked away? It wasn't like that. Watch the video again, Mom. Listen to him say I deserved it. Is that what you told yourself all these years? That I deserved it?" The silence stretched taut. The church ladies were recording everything now, tomorrow's gossip being documented in real time. The Hendersons had already left. Mrs. Henderson's parting look one of horrified sympathy. Ron tried one last manipulation. "Fine. I'll leave. I'll go to a hotel. We can discuss this like civilized people tomorrow." "No," I said firmly, reading from the statement I'd prepared with Ms. Santos. "From this moment forward, this house will no longer provide shelter for abuse or silence for violence. I am establishing clear boundaries, no contact, no communication, no proximity. Any violation will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." The male officer nodded approvingly. "Smart. Get it on record." I turned to face the remaining guests, the camera still recording. "You've all been witnesses today, not just to one incident, but to the revelation of years of abuse that was hidden behind charity donations and country club memberships. Your silence enabled this. Your polite looking away allowed it to continue." Pastor Williams had the grace to appear ashamed. 2 of the church ladies were crying, whether from shock or recognition of their own complicity. I couldn't tell. The grandfather clock chimed 5 p.m., its brass pendulum swinging with metronomic indifference. The chandelier cast prismatic light across the scene, beautiful fixtures illuminating an ugly truth finally dragged into the open. "Sir, we need to go," the officer said to Ron, hand moving to his cuffs. "Am I being arrested?" Ron's voice cracked. "Detained for questioning. The video evidence suggests assault. The prosecutor will determine charges." As they led him toward the door, Ron turned back, his eyes finding mine across the wreckage of his carefully constructed kingdom. The look he gave me should have been terrifying, pure hatred, undiluted rage, the promise of retribution. But I didn't flinch, didn't look away. The 12-year-old girl who'd cowered from him was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd finally learned that the truth, properly documented and courageously revealed, was the strongest weapon against abuse. The lights from the patrol car painted blue and red shadows across the sterling silver platters, the untouched turkey, the perfect place settings for a family that had never existed outside of my mother's desperate imagination. The patrol car's lights painted shifting patterns across the sterling silver as they led Ron out blue, red, silver, repeat. The sound of his protests faded as the door closed behind him, leaving only the grandfather clocks ticking and the soft wheeze of the coffee maker everyone had forgotten to turn off. I watched through the window as they guided him into the back seat. No dramatic struggle, no shouting, just a man in an expensive polo shirt being driven away from the kingdom he'd built on fear and silence. The neighbors had gathered on their lawns, phones raised, documenting the fall of Flagstaff's most charitable couple. Inside, the dining room looked like a museum exhibit, American Family Thanksgiving, interrupted. The $180 turkey sat untouched, its golden skin now cold and dimpled. The rented dishes caught the dying afternoon light, $1,200 worth of pretense that no one would ever eat from. Denise sank into Ron's chair, his throne at the head of the table, her hands shaking as she reached for his wine glass. "Get out," she whispered. "Mom, get out." The glass shattered against the wall, Malbec bleeding down the ivory paint like all the words she'd swallowed over the years. "You destroyed everything. My marriage, my reputation, my life." "He destroyed those things," I said calmly, already gathering my bag. "I just stopped hiding the evidence." Brielle stood by the kitchen door, mascara streaked and smaller somehow, like watching her father's arrest had physically diminished her. "Why?" she asked. "Why today? Why like this?" I pulled my coat from the closet, my movements deliberate and unhurried. "Because you sent me that text, the place card with my name spelled wrong. Harpy. You wanted me here as the family failure, the cautionary tale that made your success shine brighter, but I'm done being your shadow. We're sisters. No, we're two people who shared a house. You got a father, I got a predator. You got a BMW, I got bruises. That's not sisterhood, that's survival in the same cage." I picked up my camera, checking that all the memory cards were secure. Every photo from today, the perfect table settings, the guests' shocked faces, Ron being led away, all documented, evidence and art, truth and composition. Pastor Williams lingered by the door, his shepherd's instinct keeping him present in crisis. "Harper, if you need anything, counseling, support." Where was that offer 5 years ago? I asked. 10 years ago, when the bruises were fresh and the fear was suffocating. He had no answer that wouldn't sound like an excuse. I walked past the kitchen where the smart speaker had gone silent, past the pantry where it all unraveled, past the family photos lining the hallway, 16 years of forced smiles hiding 16 years of pain. My hand found the doorknob, cool and solid. "Harper." Denise's voice was broken glass and bitter wine. "If you leave now, don't come back. You're no daughter of mine." I turned to face her one last time. She looked so small in Ron's chair, drowning in his absence, clutching at the shreds of a life built on looking away. "I haven't been your daughter since I was 12, I said. "I was your sacrifice, the acceptable loss to keep your second chance at happiness. But I'm nobody's ghost anymore." The door opened to evening air sharp with approaching winter. The patrol car was gone, but the neighbors remained, their curiosity hungry and unsatisfied. I walked past them without explanation, without shame, without the weight I'd carried for 16 years. My phone buzzed. "Talia. Saw the news alerts. Are you okay? I have the guest room ready." Then, Mr. Keating. "Proud of you, kid. That took real courage." "Ms. Santos. Reviewed the footage. Rock solid case. We'll get that protection order tonight." But it was the last message that stopped me at my car. An unknown number, but I recognized the area code, the women's shelter. "Saw the news? You saved someone today? Maybe yourself. Maybe someone watching. Maybe someone who needed to see it's possible to fight back and win. Thank you." I sat in my car for a moment, looking back at the house, warm lights still glowing, the wreath on the door still perfectly centered, the American dream still pretending behind suburban windows. Through the dining room window, I could see the abandoned feast, the empty chairs, the space where truth had finally been served. The engine started smooth and sure. In my rearview mirror, the house grew smaller, the lights dimmer, the past quieter. My ribs ached where Ron had hit me, my cheek still burned from his slap, but underneath the pain was something new, not happiness exactly, but freedom. The kind that comes from finally saying the words you've swallowed for years. The radio played something soft about going home for the holidays. I turned it off. I was done with that narrative. Done with forced gratitude and fake families and silent suffering wrapped in ribbon and tradition. My phone's GPS showed 3 possible routes away from here. I chose the longest one, the one that wound through mountains and darkness before opening to city lights and new possibilities. In my bag, the protection order paperwork waited for a judge's signature. On my camera, the evidence waited for a prosecutor's review. But in my chest, for the first time in 16 years, nothing waited. No held breath, no swallowed words, no braced impact, just lungs that could finally expand fully, a voice that could speak truth, and a heart that no longer needed permission to beat. The last thing I saw in the mirror was the lights not blue and red this time, but the warm yellow of a house that was never home, fading into darkness as I drove towards something better. Even if I didn't know what that something was yet, it had to be better than living as a ghost at their table, spelling my name wrong and calling it family. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if this resonated with you, and share your thoughts about standing up to abuse, finding your voice, or whatever this story stirred in your heart. Your stories matter too.